Hi.
Hi. I was just saying, it's like the middle of February. It's real snowy here in Toronto, and we're all in this lockdown. And I was just really feeling like having just a feel-good hockey talk tonight. And I thought, what
Nice.
better person to do that with than you? So,
Oh, thank
welcome.
you.
Thank you so much for joining me. We got a lot of people jumping on now, and so I'm just going to introduce you. So, interestingly enough, you are, for people that do not know, your background was as an actor and a singer, which I thought was so interesting. And then, you moved into broadcasting, and what you're probably most known for here is going to be Rogers Hometown Hockey. And you're also co-hosting, I noticed, Top of Her Game, which I'd love to talk about a little bit as well.
Mm.
But yeah, I got to start with, how did you make that transition? I also saw that your goal was to be an opera singer. Is that true?
Yeah, that was very early on. That's when I was in high school. That was sort of my aspiration until I hit first year university and I realized that classical voice it just required much more discipline than I had at that age. So
Okay.
that didn't really come to fruition, but it was my focus all through high school.
Okay, cool. So, okay, you spent a lot of time. You were in a number of plays and music. I think were you nominated for a Juno? Did I
I
see?
was, yeah, yeah. So I ended up, I left music, I left classical music behind. I ended up going to theater school and I did some theater and TV and film. But music was always my first love. So I moved
Amazing.
to Toronto when I was in my early 20s and was always looking for my kind of right musical soulmates and ended up finding this band, Joy Drop. And that was, we spent a bunch of years together on this incredible journey. We put out 2 albums and we were nominated for Juno. And
Wow.
yeah, so that was sort of, I really didn't know what the music business entailed. But luckily, the guys in the band, they had some experience. So yeah, it was like head first. We just dove into it and had some success along the way. And then I did some other music stuff. I was on a reality singing competition, Rockstar in Excess.
Cool.
Yeah. And then I found my way to TV.
Amazing. So I'm curious though, how did you make that transition? You found your way to TV, like you got into broadcasting. How'd that happen? Because I think it's so interesting, for people out there, like I always like to do a little bit behind the scenes. We get to see you on TV now, but I think it's just inspirational. Something that I always say is, even for me too, I didn't always know how I was going to get to where I was going to
Mhm.
be. You just kind of figure it out along the way. So I'd love to know just how you made that transition into TV.
Well, it definitely wasn't anything that was in my sights. I had a little bit of sort of TV adjacent experience. I mean, obviously, I'd done TV as an actress.
Yeah.
Um, and when I was in Joy Drop, I was on Michael Landsberg's show Off the Record a whole bunch. So that was kind of my little strange foray into the sports world. I always loved sports. I always loved hockey. But I was always a musician weighing in on sports.
Wow.
But when I decided to move into television, it really was a result of, I did this show Rockstar in Excess. I was the first Canadian eliminated. So there were 4 Canadians on the show. It took place in LA. And funny enough, because I was the first Canadian eliminated, I was the one that all the kind of entertainment media outlets were calling to kind of weigh in every week, like do a
Yeah.
weekly, update on the show. And so I started to get some TV experience.
Amazing.
And I hit kind of an impasse in my music life. I made a solo album and it really didn't sell. And I was like, what am I going to do?
Wow.
And so I thought, I don't know, I made a leap.
I
And
love it. I love it.
yeah,
That's such a powerful message, really, to everybody out there, because I honestly think that's how you achieve great things. Like, if you're never willing to take that risk, and interestingly enough, some of the things that didn't work out for you is what actually opened the door to your success and to where you are now.
100%.
I think
Yeah.
that's so important because, so much of my work, people are, and not just in athletes, but just in general, like we fear failure. And I really
Hmm.
think for me, it's part of the process to achieving something great. And so I love hearing that. And it was really, in a sense, getting kicked out that opened new doors for you, right? If we're willing
Totally.
to keep going and step in, that's awesome. So, okay, I want to talk a little bit, a little hockey talk now, a little Rogers hometown hockey. Looking for some feel-good stories on a Thursday night in the dead of winter here in the middle
Yeah.
of COVID. So, yeah, I guess I'm curious. You know, hockey, first of all, takes you all over the country, all different places, all different kinds of stories. What's one of your favorites? Like, what's one of the most amazing, incredible experiences? Like, I feel hockey, you know, there's so much more to just the game of hockey. It's a community. It brings people together, and I just love what you're doing. So,
Totally. I mean, it's so multifaceted. I think like there have been so many surprises along the way, whether it's, the beauty of a particular part of the world you never imagined going
yeah,
to. And even, and every stop, and I mean this with all of my heart, had something that was impactful, whether it was a story of a local hero who'd been, driving the Zamboni for 30 years,
yeah,
or whether it is an NHLer or an Olympic great that comes out of this place, or the physical beauty. And I mean, I've said this many times before, and so hopefully I'm not boring people who've already heard this, but I would say for Ron and myself, probably the greatest gift and maybe educational experience along the way has really been opening our eyes to Canada's Indigenous people and to First Nations in this country. And I think we've both really learned a lot, learned how much more we have to learn,
yeah.
and feel kind of like we've been woefully undereducated as a nation. But we've been lucky enough to be hosted on two First Nations the last two seasons.
Wow.
And those have been some of the most powerful experiences. They're just so deeply rooted in the land and the earth and the surroundings, and hockey is so deeply embedded in that culture. And so, I mean, there are a million stories, and they're all great, but we feel super fortunate that people just trust us.
Yeah. Yeah. So share one of your, you talk about the lessons learned, and what would be a lesson, you learn so much, and also recognizing how much more there is to learn. What can you say to people? What would be one of the biggest lessons that you learned that maybe you want to share?
Well, I mean, I think there's more and more coming to light about the sort of inequities. We've been to places that Enoch Cree Nation was the first First Nation to host us. It's just outside of Edmonton. There's a very well-known casino there,
Yeah.
where like big, Jerry Seinfeld will play, like big acts go through. But
Yeah.
Enoch Cree Nation itself had a boil water advisory, and just that finally was lifted only a couple of years ago. So
Yeah.
I think it's things like that like it's, and the sort of the racism that is encountered, and those kinds of real eye-opening things that when you cross the country you hear them. But I think also like what you're saying, the ways that communities come together, and the sort of the rallying cry, like the arena is just this place where community happens and people's hearts open.
Yeah.
So, as much as I think hockey's going through a reckoning right now, and there are shifts in culture that need to happen.
Yeah.
But that's always been the sort of beautiful part, is that it can create family when family is needed the most.
Yeah. I guess seeing it firsthand, right? It opens your eyes up. We might hear things, but being able to experience it firsthand really just shifts perspective so much.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to me a little about community, because that's, going on to the real positives that the game has, right? The passion of the game, and just how do you see it bringing people together and really bringing communities together? What are some of the most like inspirational community stories that you've come across?
Well, I mean, there's, I think the Humboldt Broncos story
Yeah.
is probably, because we
Yeah.
really witnessed that as a country, and even beyond our borders, as a greater hockey community.
Yeah.
And the ripple effects obviously still felt. The loss of those 16 are still keenly felt.
For sure.
But, uh, you know, I think another thing that Ron and I have learned along the way is that, we've had like Tyler Smith, and we've had Ryan Straczynski. We've had a bunch of these guys on our show, and we always, I don't know, it's like we go into it thinking that we're going to need to lift their spirits in some way. And in fact, they always lift us up.
Amazing.
And so I think, that was one of the, I mean, obviously the biggest tragedy, disasters that, in the hockey world that we've ever seen. But to see the way that Canada still, hey, Tyler's on here. I appreciate you, man. Yeah, just to see the way that Canada rallied. And I should say, since Tyler's on here, like the way that, Tyler and Caleb Dahlgren are, and probably all the guys, Ryan too, is like, inspiring people everywhere they go. Like this is not an experience in vain.
Yeah.
Tyler's reaching out and sharing stories of his mental health, and Caleb has a book coming out, and Caleb Dahlgren is like, I've only met him a couple of times, and he reaches out to me probably once a month to say, how are you? Are you doing okay?
Wow.
Like, and if you ever need a friend, I'm here for you.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. Special people.
Special people.
Special people. That's awesome. What's it like working with Ron MacLean? Tell us something funny.
Yeah. Well, the funniest, there's lots of, we've spent a lot of time on the road together, and it's never dull. When we first were kind of thrust together, when I was up for the job, what Rogers Hometown Hockey was sort of just the seed of an idea, and I don't think they quite knew what it was going to be. And I had thrown my hat into the ring, and I really wanted to be a part of it. So I was working in Calgary at the time, but I was in Toronto, and I got a message from the executive producer saying, there's a meeting at Starbucks by the CBC building, with Ron, meet at 5:00. So both Ron and I went thinking that we would be with the producer, and actually it was just the two of us. It was like this weird blind date. And I don't think we talked about hockey once. We talked about music. He's a huge, huge music fan.
Really?
And yeah, he started his broadcast career as a DJ.
Okay.
So, and everybody, who watches him on Hockey Night and Hometown Hockey knows he has an incredible retention, but he has an incredible retention for music as well. So he's a massive music fan.
Nice.
I don't know. Like we have a great rapport, a great relationship. I don't know if I can think of like one funny anecdote, but I don't know. I always say that I think he believed in me more than I believed in myself.
Wow.
Yeah. And so he's really, I have to give him so much credit for elevating me to that role with no questions asked. He's like, it was just a given for him. Ryan saying, do I remember, in Prince Rupert? I loved Prince Rupert. That was when Prince Rupert was one of our greatest surprises, because I think, we knew it would be beautiful on the coast of British Columbia, but I don't think we understood how incredibly stunning it would be. And that was a remarkable visit for us.
The hidden gems in Canada, hey? It's amazing that we live in this country and that we don't know there's so many incredible places that we still have to see.
Unreal. Yeah, everybody should try to get there.
Amazing. Tell me a little bit about COVID. Obviously, you can't travel. Things have changed significantly. I talk about the pivot game. We got to keep moving forward, but just pivot. And so what's your pivot game been like without your travel, without being able to do what you would usually do? I know you're working on top of her game. So what have you been doing over COVID, and how have you been managing and pivoting?
Well, I think at the beginning I was terrified, like everybody else, that everything was going to fall apart, and I have to give my employer like huge thanks and kudos, because I still have a job. Hometown hockey, you know, we were all hoping that it would come back in some form this season, but it's not doable. Like our show
Yeah.
is about reaching out to the community. So
Yeah.
instead, I'm appearing on Saturday nights presenting a hometowny feature, and then I do a viewing party with an
Okay.
NHL alumni or a hockey
Yeah,
star, and
nice.
we kind of invite the public. Um, but so I was lucky enough, you know, to retain my employment. And what became evident when the pause in live sports happened the first time around, um, was that there, you know, I would look on websites and there were still stories about the Blue Jays and stories about the Maple Leafs and stories about the Raptors. And I'm like, well, where's the story about the women? And, you know, I think that's also one thing that hometown hockey has really allowed us to have a platform to try to be a representative show. But there has been no singular show on the sports landscape in Canada that focused on women. And so it was the pause that allowed the pivot, you know. It was
See,
like,
there you go.
yeah.
Amazing.
So Top of Her Game was born, and it's just an opportunity to interview and feature great women who are in the world of sports. Sometimes it's
Amazing.
somebody like Kathy Engelbert, who's the commissioner of the Women's Basketball Association, or, you know, or the, yeah, there, or we have, I talked to Pepper Persley, who is a 9-year-old WNBA reporter.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so, you know, we're discovering these people also
Yeah.
as we go along, and it's been really amazing to introduce these incredible women to the rest of the country, and we're going to keep on going.
Yeah, I love it because, you know, everything that you're doing, it's just like real life stories. And that is so incredible. Like, to me, that's what just makes it so special.
Mm-hmm.
We have just a comment here. Have you ever been to Winnipeg? We got David
Oh
Graves
yes.
from Winnipeg wants you to visit Winnipeg sometime.
We have done a couple of hometown hockey stops in Winnipeg
Yeah.
and surrounding areas, lots of time in Manitoba in general. But yeah, there's never seems to be enough time to do some real exploration. But I know Winnipeg is a very cool town. I'd like to go not in the winter next
Yeah, for
time.
sure. For sure. I have to be honest, I'm from Winnipeg. So it's very cold in the winter. Absolutely. You should visit in the summer, 100%. But probably hockey takes you there more to a lot of cold places. And
Very, yeah.
yeah, for sure. Something that I love just listening to you speak, I just kind of want to highlight it because it really connects for me, is just sort of this genuineness. And I just love you sharing, you know, how maybe Ron was a mentor, how he believed in you at times more than you believed in yourself. And I just appreciate talking like that because I think that we all feel it, and just the power of pushing through things, or being lucky enough to have a mentor or finding a mentor that can be really impactful
Mm-hmm.
in your life and your career, and, you know, just being open to sharing all these things. Again, all of the stuff that I think make you so great is your stories and your connection, and I can so feel that from you.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, for me, COVID pivot too is just trying to do a lot more online stuff. These lives are completely new for me, totally out of my comfort zone. But you know what's amazing for me is just, you know, it's pushed me to do something different and to be able to connect with amazing people like yourself. And so that's been truly incredible for me. So I think I'm going to ask some questions now because people sent a few questions in the
Oh,
daytime.
sure.
And I want to
Yeah.
be respectful of your time too. I really appreciate you coming on and doing this
Oh,
with me.
absolutely my pleasure.
So, okay, let me see. I have a question from someone saying, what advice would you give for people looking to start working in the sports industry?
Hmm. Well, I mean, I did not follow a conventional path.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think anything can happen. I think I was lucky enough to find a small station to work at, and that's where I really honed my skills. And again, right place, right time. Those places are fewer and further between than they
Yeah.
used to.
Yeah.
So, I definitely see more people coming through school. Those are the people who tend to end up at our workplace, people who
Ah,
come out of, Ryerson or all these great programs. NATE or SATE, or, you know, and they intern and then they move up. So
Yeah.
I would say if somebody is looking to get into that, then for sure school is never a bad option. And there are lots of, you know, programs that differ from one another. And so I think school, you know, I'm also, you know, the media is there for you to create at this point. So
Yeah,
I think
I love
if
that.
you're really interested, I mean, I can't tell you how many podcast requests I get. So I do think that's what people are doing.
Okay.
Um,
I
but
love it.
I think why not? You know, like
Yeah.
you might as well. If you're really interested in that, then I do think you have to jump into it yourself,
Create your own path.
create your own path.
I love
But
that.
it is, I think, you know, it is one of those businesses. We
Mm.
saw Bell just cut a whole bunch of people. Like it
Yeah.
can be thankless,
Yeah.
like many other businesses.
Yeah.
And so you better love it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the great advice in there. Honestly, love what you do and create your way, you know, and that's really when I listen to your story. I mean, you might have had different opportunities. I like this comment. Now, Tara's becoming a mentor for young girls and young women. Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
absolutely like it's so important to see strong women. And that's really why I wanted to highlight you and your story to all the girls out there, all the women, and really just everybody
Yeah.
in general, truly. My son is on here too, actually, and he is a graduate from Ryerson Sports
Oh,
Media. So
perfect.
I'm going to just give
Yeah.
him a little plug coming right from Tara Slone. Create your own thing because it is hard to get jobs right now. And
Totally. And I mean,
yeah,
I feel like, you know, I know at Sportsnet, like they are really hungry for content that is not
yeah,
conventional TV. So like the world is really your oyster.
yeah, yeah. Biggest lesson that you've learned in your life, just from what you've been through, what you've done. And I know it's a big question, but I think it's inspirational for people to hear because, like I say, I'm kind of highlighting the failures because I think it's really part of what grows us. You know, it's often I think that there's a quote, a good quote, the courage, success is usually just around the corner, but you know, we usually give up before we're just about to get there.
Right.
So, what have you learned from everything that you've been through? Maybe a lesson that you learned from a community that might be interesting, or a story, or
Well, I can tell you that what emerges, you know, I end all of my top of her game interviews by asking our interviewee what they would say to their younger selves. So what's the best
yeah,
advice? And I would say that 9 out of 10 people talk about being authentic and unapologetically themselves. And I mean, of course, that is much easier in retrospect. You know, it's
yeah,
really hard to kind of trust your own heart. And I think when we're afraid of failure, it's extra hard. So,
yeah.
I mean, I would say I love that. You know, Soroya Tinker, who we had on last week, said that, and
Mm,
our guest this week also, Bilquis Abdul Qadir, said it too. And I just think, you know, just be true to yourself. Like I think if all else fails, at least you know that you did you.
yeah,
Um, and I would say, in terms of sort of jumping at life's opportunities, I have naturally just kind of weighed things in terms of, will I regret not having done this?
mm, yeah,
And if the answer is yes, I do it. So, you know, I
yeah,
think some of those things that I've jumped into, not all of them are entirely successful, but the ones I would say, you know, doing Rockstar in Excess, which really was a question mark for me,
yeah.
or writing the letter to the president of Sportsnet saying, I want to be part of hometown hockey. That was because I didn't want to regret not having tried.
Yeah, you can't get anywhere, right? Unless you try. I got another question for you. I don't know if you'll be able to answer this, but the coolest place that you've ever been to. I know you're going to tell me that there's lots of them, but somebody
There
asked, so
are,
I gotta ask it.
oh my gosh. I mean, it's really like Canada's beauty is, it is breathtaking. Like
Amazing.
I can't even, like, you know,
Oh,
you go up north and there are there's like, you know, ice roads and the northern lights, and then you go out west and there's places like Prince Rupert, and I mean, there's whales and craggy rocks. And I mean, and then you go to Newfoundland and you're in Grossmore National Park and it's like the
Wow.
moon. And then you're in my hometown, just Halifax. And I don't know.
Oh, you're inspiring me. Honestly, when COVID's over, I'm
I
going to tour Canada. I love it.
Yeah, and that's like I haven't even mentioned the Rocky Mountains. Like
Yeah.
it's impossible.
Yeah, amazing. I don't know if anybody else has any other questions. They can pop them in there. I like this comment. Just be true to yourself. Works every time, right? Welcoming opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I want to say, from what I hear, that, you know, kind of maybe we'll wrap up with this, but follow your heart and take a leap, you know, and yeah, so that's awesome. Tara, thank you so much for your time. I know how busy you are, and it's so nice to connect with you. I know for me too, just being a woman sort of in a male dominant field, it's nice to connect with powerful women out there in hockey, and I appreciate you, and I'm so grateful to have you join me.
Likewise, feel very honored to have been asked. So this was great. Thank you, Brenley.
Okay, all the best to you.
Okay.
Bye bye.